On today's show, it's a belated recap of Cavs Warriors. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. He's the proprietor of Down Euclid. Evan, show off that awesome hoodie you have on. Show the people. They're watching on YouTube. It's a great hoodie. It's a great site. Go support it. We always have Jake Stevens on the ones and twos, and today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. We're going to go through Cavs Warriors today. Big takeaway, game awards, and miscellaneous thoughts. Evan, I want to start with a fun question, though. Just a random one that came into my head. I was reading a YouTube review, or not a YouTube review, an Apple review. And you know what? Took it to heart. I'm going to ask you just random questions every so often. I think I'm going to try to build a segment where we just try to look at things that are fun within this team and still make it basketball, but have a little goofiness with it. But I'm going to ask you just a question. It was the New York Marathon this weekend. Mm-hmm. Which Cavalier player do you think would be the best marathoner?
Currently on the team or
currently,
of all time?
Yes.
Okay.
Currently.
Probably Donovan Mitchell, just because of his insane endurance and the fact that he's just always going. I could see that. Maybe Isaac Okoro, just because he's an athletic freak. One of those guys. What about you?
I think those are good answers. I thought Mitchell for sure. I thought about Max Strus. This question also came into my head because they had Ty Jerome on the 60 Seconds with a Mod segment at the arena this weekend, and they asked him what his least favorite exercise was, and he said distance running. So the answer is not Ty Jerome.
Well, maybe the people who hate it, though, because I too do not enjoy distance running, maybe the people who don't enjoy it are the ones that are best equipped for it. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's a difference between maybe you could get them to do 5 miles really well, but there's 26 is its own thing. I think the answer is Mitchell, Okoro, or Strus, and then Sam Merrill's my wild card because he's smaller, he's a little lighter, he's a shooter.
His ankles are disintegrating.
That's also true. So maybe he's not the answer. So yeah, I don't know. I would love to see which NBA player actually would attempt to do it and do it well. We're never gonna know, and I understand running is punishment for athletes, but I digress. All right, Cavs Warriors big takeaway. Evan, for me, this was their best performance of the season. I think full stop. Even if it wasn't perfect, even if they left some food on the table, so to speak, I thought this was their best performance. What say you?
No, I agree with you. It's early into the season. It's hard to take full stock because I asked JB Bickerstaff about it pregame. Last season, they were flat out dominant at home, and they were winless until that game against Golden State at home in the season. And they also started out the season really hot. And I said, is something different, or is it just more so the fact that you guys have had bad injury luck and just some consistency issues? And JB's yeah, it's more of that. And he said maybe it's just some stylistic changes and just kind of adapting things. And to his point, there were moments where they could have closed against Oklahoma City or Indiana, but then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Tyrese Halliburton both went off, or the Cavs kind of left them open from the perimeter and just one inopportune moment. But in terms of completeness, this gave you a really good perspective of how the Cavs would play on offense. I don't think we really got a full understanding of it even during the limited moments in preseason, or maybe even that game against Brooklyn, but they were playing a lot faster. They were making a concerted effort to attack the basket, apply pressure as often as they could, and just play a speed. A lot of fast break opportunities were on the table for the Cavs, and they took advantage of them because this is an older Warriors team that does play smaller. And the Cavs are okay, let's just constantly apply pressure to them, and then we'll kind of impose our will inside. And then that naturally opened up shots and opportunities on the perimeter where maybe the Cavs didn't make all the ones they wanted to make, but they had a lot of clean looks because Golden State had to adapt and adjust and just defend the interior, where at the same time, they also could be getting killed from the perimeter or a guy slashing to the basket.
So no one win, I think, is going to like solve all of the issues you might have, right? Like this is not something that I think totally would make me think anything that has gone wrong in the first couple games isn't an issue. But, and I genuinely believe what I'm about to say, and I'm not just like devil's advocating myself. This Warriors team is really good.
Oh yeah, they won 5 in a row coming into this game.
That offense is awesome. I think Kuminga, he did some really good stuff. Like they've gotten really good minutes out of guys, even with Andrew Wiggins, not being at his best. I think that team's like more of a title threat. I'm a little higher on them than I think like the betting markets, let's say, are. I think that team's really good. The Cavs took it to them. Mitchell showed up for that game in a big way. Mobley, I thought, had a real impact in that game without scoring a lot and really struggling on offense at times. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. But that's like the first time all year, Evan, that I felt the Cavs were actually putting a team on their heels and dominating in a Cavs-y way. Like the bigs were huge. Everything kind of clicked, and it was without like a great Max Strus performance or a great shooting performance from the field from Darius Garland, at least. Everything was just them playing the kind of basketball I think they want to play, and they did it against like a really good team. I come away from that feeling going into this West Coast road trip, I think feeling more optimistic about where this team is going over the short term than I was a little bit ago. And maybe that's just reactionary, but that's where my head went.
I don't think it's reactionary at all. I think that's a good way to look at it, just in the fact that this was not just like a complete win for them or a complete game for them, but also just like, I don't want to be dramatic either and say that this is a win they absolutely needed, but like it was a game that like, hey, things aren't going your way. Like you want something to kind of turn around. Like you make a pretty strong win against a very good team, as you said. Like maybe Golden State isn't as a big a favorite in my eyes, but they are still very good. JB and I kind of talked about a pregame. Like it's been nearly a decade since the Warriors just started going under like Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and then I really took off when Steve Kerr took over Mark Jackson. But it's just testament to how good those players are and how like, I don't know, like just how dominant they can be. Like even though they're old, they're a little bit long. They are very long on the tooth, very thin depth wise, but like the guys they drafted, not named James Wiseman, have panned out for them for the most part. And like they still have some stuff in the back chamber, like to make some moves. Like it's still weird to think like Chris Paul is their sixth man, and Chris Paul could be a starting point guard for several teams in this league. Like the Warriors are an interesting team, and there were moments where the Cavs were certainly down against Golden State, but they didn't really falter. And I think that's encouraging to see too, just because maybe last year, like the pressure would get to the Cavs a little bit, or just one of those games that gets away from them super easily. But no, the Cavs really just responded to whatever Golden State hit them with, a little bit of their own force, and just eventually kind of took momentum back into their corner and never really relented. Even if Golden State got close, like the Cavs found a way to stretch the lead back out to make sure that like they weren't chasing their tails all throughout this game. And you talked about Max Strus. Like I'm still so impressed with how impactful he's been for the first 7 games for Cleveland so far. Like it's not just the 3-point shooting, it's the passing, it's the rebounding, it's like the positional defense. Like he is a dude who can unlock a lot of things for this Cavs team, and it definitely makes the offense just like click a lot better.
You hit on this as well. I think just Jared Allen being back and Garland being back, you hit on this in your notes, and I want to make sure we get to it because I think it's a great shout. That has also just added a ton, I think, to what is going on here, that they are actually healthy and that they're having the guys that they plan on having. That can, I think, be overstated how important that is.
No, I'm glad you agree with me on that one. I think Allen is that security blanket. That's something they all said post-game, but like frees up Evan Mobley more than anything to allow him to do a little bit more on defense than just protecting the rim and maybe just having to deal with banging down low with big men. But like Darius Garland, like he was the catalyst for the offense. Like I wrote about it for a Down Euclid recap, but like Garland wasn't the highest scorer. He wasn't the most efficient player on the floor, but like he was constantly applying pressure to Golden State. And like he told me post game, he's like, all right, I got like my first 2 shots were wide open threes that I missed. And he's just like, it's going to be one of those nights. So I just started going downhill and attacking the basket, and they kept giving me free layups because they denied lob passes. Then they adjusted to defend me, and like it unlocked everything for everybody else. And I'm just like, yeah, it's nice to see the Cavs just kind of play with a little bit of different stylistic looks, just because they were a little bit more one-dimensional. When Garland was out because they didn't have a point guard on the roster to play. And I think that's testament to how important Darius Garland is to this team, but also how much the Cavs really just do have the luxury of strength in numbers as long as like Garland out of everyone is just healthy.
Yeah, if Garland, we're going to hit on Garland a bunch more in segment 2 coming up, but that guy's vital to how this team runs, and he goes away, the team changes. That's coming up. More Darius Garland talking. Our game awards, though, up next. That was a little too hokey. I apologize. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, which is really the only way I would recommend buying tickets at this point. This is an app that I absolutely cannot recommend enough to use if you're trying to go to a game last minute. I was in New York, for instance. People have heard this story before on the show. I was in August. I planned on buying tickets on Gametime, and I got the best deal possible. Save my friends and I a ton of money on Liberty Aces tickets, and I'm going to use it to get last minute tickets from now on when I want to go to events. They have last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. You can find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, and you can check out seats in your venue as well. There's also a lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and many more awesome features. They have the Gametime guarantee. With that difference is you always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section somewhere else, and same section a row, they'll credit you 110% of your difference. That's an amazing guarantee. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, game awards. If you're tuning in for the first time, what we do here after games is we give it an MVP, a stat of the night, and our play of the night. Evan, who's your MVP?
I alluded to it in closing moments of the first segment, but it was Darius Garland for me. Like, played with a lot of speed and tenacity that I'm maybe not used to seeing him play with, just because you look at like Garland's physical profile and maybe what he was coming out of Vanderbilt, and you don't think like, yes, this is a very hyper athletic point guard that can play with a lot of speed and bursts, but like he's sneakily fast. Like he has like that deceptive athleticism where he can flip a switch and go 0 to 100, but also there's moments where he does pull back and he does maestro the offense a little bit too. But like he had his finger on the pulse for the Cavs offensively, and there are a lot of there's a couple turnovers he had like that probably like get better with just getting back into shape and everything, but like overall, like he was the one who really applied that pressure to Golden State to start this game. And then I think it had a trickle down effect on everybody else in this team because after, like I said, the Cavs kind of had that momentum back in their corner. Garland was a big part of them not letting it go because he just kept hitting Golden State. Like when you thought maybe the Warriors had a shot to get back in the game.
He, to me, was absolutely MVP. I'm exactly with you on this. This was someone who I think set the tone for everything they did. He was aggressive. He got to the line a bunch. He got 13 free throws, I think, in this game.
See, that's the big thing, too. Is like we talked about that leading into the season. Like a thing he could do is like if he can handle the physicality, and like we noticed he was a little bit bigger at media day, so maybe that's a case of it. But he's a really good free throw shooter, and him like a drawing contact and getting to the line consistently is a way to kill teams. And like I didn't even realize it was 13 free throws until like towards the end of the third quarter. I'm like, oh wow, he is putting pressure on them.
Yeah, he was going downhill. He was playing with tempo. My play of the night will get at this as well, but this is someone who was going up and down the floor, up and down and moving and making really intentional decisions to play with pace. And he has to be the one. Like Mobley can help with it. Mitchell is doing it more, I think, to his credit in a way that he hasn't always in his career. But it's for Garland to do it and unlock that. That's what unlocks the Cavs' pace in a lot of ways. So he's absolutely MVP. This was a really phenomenal game from Darius Garland, even without, him hitting a bunch of stuff. All right, stat of the night. What's your stat, Evan?
So I may have to update it because I wasn't taking.
You want me to go real quick and you can come back? We can come back to you?
No, I'll just say this. Like, it's a random statistic, but going into this game, Cleveland had lost 17 games in a row to Golden State, including the playoffs. So, and it was their first regular season win over the Warriors since 2016, I believe. So, and also, like, speaking of Darius Garland, had never beaten Golden State once in his career with the Cavs. So, like, a little bit of just, like, kind of like just checkmark moments for a rivalry that's not really there anymore, I'd say. But there's still some hatred from Cleveland fans, especially when Draymond checked in. Like, I was like, oh, either they pumped in this crowd noise or people were actually booing the heck out of him. And then as the game went along, I'm like, okay, they're actually booing him.
Yeah, he is. I texted a friend during the game. I'm gonna read the exact text. It's not exactly like my best joke, but
He got hit in the
nether
region.
So this was right after the intros. It was 6:07 p.m. on Sunday. The year is 2050. United States Senator Draymond Green is still booed in Cleveland, Ohio, despite buying a small stake in the team from Dan Gilbert. He's still just going to get booed. He could be like, I have solved world hunger, and I think this dude is getting booed in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, and
which, like, it's fun.
I'm fine with it. Like, yeah, you don't have to, like, every player doesn't have to be loved, and like there are some players that probably rightfully earn some distaste from the fans, and I don't know, maybe one day people soften their stances, and there's like, oh, hey, it's just like mutual, like, respect for one another, but they still play up the joke and the beef a little bit. But yeah, like you said, like 2050, would not be surprised if Michigan Congressman Draymond Green buys a stake in the Cavaliers as part of like revitalizing Detroit or like Flint with Dan Gilbert's assistance. So yeah, not a bad joke. I agree. Like that could be a very distinct possibility.
It's like a 3. It's not good, but I am who I am. I make very dumb jokes about Draymond Green. All right,
dude, that's my entire brand, dude.
I'm lucky for that. All right, stat of the night. Evan Mobley's rebounds. He had finished with 16, I think, 16 or 17. They docked him one at one point. I was confused as to why. But just to put this in context, he had 17 once last year, 18 once last year, and 17 twice as a rookie. For him to get 16 plus rebounds is just not something that has happened a lot. And him and Jared Allen, I think, as much as Darius did on offense, they dictated this game on defense and really did a great job on the glass. And just that deserved a shout. So Evan Mobley, good at rebounding, apparently. All right, play of the night.
He was really good. Like, was a part of like playing, like, yeah, Garland, as we had stressed several times now, has like been like the big part of like the Cavs playing physically, but a lot of frontline pressure did come from Mobley and Allen. And like, yeah, they weren't super impactful scoring wise in this game, but they were getting not only just like defending the glass really well, but getting Cleveland a lot of second chance opportunities too, which I also thought was pretty nice to see.
Plus, play of the night for me, Evan. 2:03 left in the first quarter. This is a really innocuous play. Darius Garland gets the ball. He claps at Tristan Thompson the moment Tristan gets the rebound to get him the ball. He pushes the ball up the floor, gets fouled, goes 2 from 2 from the line. This is what playing faster can get you. The very next Cavs offensive possession, he played really fast again, and it got him an easier basket. Darius, you can tell when he does something like he tells his big, get me the ball, and is intentional about it, and then goes, and they're getting into sets at like 20 seconds in the shot clock. That is popping off the screen if you're watching and paying attention. So to me, that was just a very innocuous play, but it tells a story about what the Cavs offense is kind of starting to become about. Evan, what is your play?
It's about 4:55-ish left in the first quarter. Allen kicks out to an open George Niang, like at the top of the perimeter, who then passes to Max Strus in the corner. You watch Golden State's defense react to Strus being out there. He kicks it back to Niang, and Niang gets a wide open 3-pointer. We've dogged Niang a few times on the show just because he hasn't been the most accurate 3-point wise heading into this season, but or at least at the early beginnings of the season, but that was a really good play, and I think like testament to like how good the Cavs can be offensively when they do have multiple shooters, or at least like multiple ball handlers and like bigs that can just provide constant defensive attention on the interior, where you're going to have that 4th or 5th guy who gets like a pretty clean, wide open look, and if they take advantage of it, it just translates to really easy offense.
All right, coming up next, miscellaneous thoughts. We're going to talk a little bit about maybe I heard Evan, did I give him a pinch in his neck? We're going to talk about that, and also how teams are defending Donovan Mitchell coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL and America's #1 sportsbook. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel. That's America's #1 sportsbook. New customers right now get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. They have an amazingly easy-to-use app. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Over the weekend, they had some in-season tournament boosts. If you're interested in looking at that, you can get the Celtics at like a pretty insane number, and that team looks really good, and they might just F around and win the tournament. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season and do some NBA stuff as well if that's your jam. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and the official sportsbook of Locked On. All right, Evan, so just for so at one point in the game, I look over at Evan. We sit next to each other.
I have poor computer posture, for those wondering, by the way.
Well, this is the kind of person I am. I feel like I'm not good at a lot of things. One of the things I do feel like I'm good at is I can tell when people, because I have my own set of tics of things that I do, that I know when I do them, something is going on up here. You had your AirPods in, and when you have your AirPods, I tend to think, okay, Evan's maybe a little tense today. And I walked by him as I was going to say hi to one of my best friends and his mom, who was one of my high school teachers at halftime. And I just tried to give Evan a little back rub, and I maybe just gripped his traps a little bit too hard. How are your shoulders today?
Oh, they're fine. It was mostly my neck.
Went a little high.
Yeah. So I had just really my dry skin's just been acting up the last few days just because the weather, and the back of my neck was a little irritated, and Chris just hit that exact spot where I'm like, oh, that really hurt. But I'm fine now. I just Benadryl, some hydrocortisone cream, just a nice little topical steroid, and you feel like $1 million when you wake up the next day. So I'm fine now. I just put that note in because I was looking at the script and I'm like, this frowny face, but no, I just had my headphones in just because sometimes I get a little overstimulated with all the noise and everything happening on in a game.
Look, this is not
so it's easier for me to watch the game if I have because my AirPods have that noise canceling feature. I can cancel a lot of the background noise. I can hear people talking directly to me, but I can focus on the game itself and not all the extracurriculars happening all around me.
This is not a new take for me, but brother, I despise how loud NBA arenas are.
Well, it's every sporting event is loud. I remember when I went to a Browns game, the light show they have before every game is a little obnoxious.
We all just gotta chill.
Yeah, but also it's fun for some fans. It's probably for the kids mostly. So I can't be too grumpy about it.
I'm 9 years old, so what am I gonna do? All right, Evan, big thing for me in this game that is a continuing trend.
Mm-hmm.
The Warriors threw two bodies at Mitchell. It was Steph Curry at times pretty aggressively helping when Mitchell's on the ball, and it's without Garland on the floor when this happens. They don't really do this as much when the threat of Garland is there. But even when it's Karis LeVert and Mitchell or whatever, they're putting a primary defender on Mitchell, and they're having someone help and shade to him. What I think it seems like trying to do are to deny him an easy driving lane. The Knicks were very aggressive about trapping with this and forcing to get rid of the ball. The Warriors were a little bit less aggressive with this, but they're A, trying to get the ball out of his hands, or B, force him to force something. I expect to see a lot of this going forward, and I'm eyeing how the Cavs are going to develop counters for this. I think it's just something that coming off the playoffs, they're going to see. It's a very logical way to press Mitchell's big offensive weakness, which is creation. It just is his weakest part of his game. And when Garland's off the floor, I think this is a kind of defensive look that you're going to see a lot of.
I do wonder if, because in an aside, it's weird to say that I did, or at least I can admit I did not have on my bingo card going into the season that Tristan Thompson would be getting the backup center minutes versus Damian Jones. So let's say the Cavs package together some of the salaries that are easily digestible by a team, and they go get, let's say the Bulls are absolutely awful and they can somehow finesse Alex Caruso out of Chicago and get a competent backup point guard just so they have a guy who can run the offense next to Mitchell. Because to your point, that is a defensive pressure point that the Cavs are still trying to find an answer for, because when Garland was out, we saw it against New York, they wouldn't start the game blitzing him heavily, but by the second half, especially in Cleveland, they were double teaming him almost the moment he crossed the timeline frustrating him enough just because he's 6'1" to force him out of maybe either an errant pass or just a pass that just stymies and kills the flow of maybe what the Cavs are trying to run offensively. And that's not a knock on Mitchell. That's just who he is as a player. But like, I am curious to see how the Cavs do adapt to that, because it is a really functional, I think is the way I want to put it, functional way for the Cavs, opponents of the Cavs to defend them and like kind of bring their offense to a screeching halt, especially if like Garland is out there, because he's always usually the first guy who checks out in terms of the guards. Mitchell plays like the entire first quarter, then Garland starts the second quarter. But if like you build enough offensive momentum with Garland and then the opposing defense kills it with like Mitchell being the primary ball handler or LeVert being the primary ball handler, like it hurts your overall flow when you bring somebody else in, because those guys are hot. They can get some of the bench pieces going, and then you bring Garland back in and then he can get everybody else going again. And I'm curious to see what the Cavs maybe could do in terms of just finding like an actual backup point, because like Ty Jerome is in the same lane as like Mitchell and LeVert in terms of like not being like super dynamic in ball handling ability, but he can provide you a little bit of something. But yeah, with Rubio gone, like the Cavs do still need like a competent backup guard behind Garland.
And on this, Evan, we're going to talk tomorrow about the West Coast preview. Mm-hmm. Where is your confidence level? Confidence level isn't really the right word, but a scale of 1 to 10, where do you kind of rate this Cavs team right now? If you're kind of just looking at them and saying, I think this is a blank quality team, where are you at with this team this point in the season?
They're not
7 games and all this stuff, but whatever.
They're not the elite of the Eastern Conference or the NBA. I think they are a team that unfortunately got hit by injuries pretty early into the year, and I wonder if Indiana is the team that has their number this year, but they were able to get a win in New York, something they couldn't do last season. It kept the Nets arm's length away and were able to win their season opener, but they're still kind of figuring things out a little bit. I think they're still trying to find themselves. It's hard to really evaluate where this team is at just like in early November at this point, but let's just say it like this. Like, they beat Golden State pretty soundly at home, and they next play Oklahoma City in Oklahoma City. If they carry with them what worked and also that momentum they got from that Warriors win into that game against Oklahoma City, and ideally like beat the Warriors, but if they're able to, or not, excuse me, not the Warriors, the Thunder, like that is that is another like 10-pole evaluation for me. I'm like, okay, yeah, they handled a very young, scrappy team that the Cavs kind of went blow for blow with at home and ended up losing to. Like, can the Cavs steal the other game they play against OKC this year? And then you obviously then look ahead to the Portland game, the Sacramento game, the Warriors game that's also on this trip as well. Like, there's plenty of stops along the way. Like, 3 of the 4 teams are tough outs. Like, the Blazers, I guess, are 2 right now just because they are a game under 500 as of when I last checked. But it's not going to be an easy trip, but I'm going to be seeing, like, how does this Cavs team look against OKC on Wednesday? Do they roll with the punches and come out on top again? Or do they maybe just start dominating early and never relent? Or do we see them maybe fold and crumble a little bit because they're still trying to find that consistency of offensive and defensive flow, or defense translating to offense? What about you?
Yeah, I'm at like a 6 right now. I think there's still some stuff to iron out. I think there is still figure out. I like that we get the Thunder game right away. I like that we get the Thunder game in a situation where they just played them. The Cavs just played them. You can go back, watch the clips. You can look at the box score, and then you say, okay, you add Jared Allen into this. You add Darius Garland into this. How does that change things? I think that's a great... I like that you're getting this early. It's not quite as useful as, say, the early season stuff and some of that stuff, but I think we're in a situation where we are just going to learn some things, and I think that's neat.
Yeah, it is neat. And plus, like, I don't know, OKC is like an interesting foil to Cleveland just because like their bigs are similar, but also incredibly different to what Cleveland has, and like the Thunder just are a big team across the board. And I don't know, it's going to be a fun game. Like but these are both 2 teams that are going to be really fun against each other.
Let's end there. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Check him out on Right Down Euclid. Thanks again to Jake Stevens. As always, back at you tomorrow with more Locked